I'm Jason Schmidt, and I have Firewatch Business and the YouTube channel. And introduce yourself and your business. And,
Yeah, I'm Gabriel Puello, and I have Hat Rack Business Solutions.
and that's and how do they find you?
You can find me on my phone, 251-589-1798.
And that's really the best way to get in touch with
really
you.
the best way. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, because and then you're a consultant,
I'm a consultant,
and
yes.
you are for sales.
Yes, well, a little bit of sales, consultant, and in the sense of, so kind of going back to the name Hat Rack, it's based on the ideology that the business owner, small business owner, wears multiple hats, and so I'm just a rack that they can hang one of those hats on. So I kind of get into a variety of different things. But for the most part, business development is probably my niche.
So we are filming today at Billy's,
Right.
on 181, which is a fantastic restaurant.
Yeah.
We love their hamburgers. That's what, when I talked to Billy and asked him if we could film here, he said there's two things we had to mention. Number one was his hamburgers, and number two is his bacon.
Bacon.
And that's not that hard to do, really.
No.
So we got a sampler coming out here in a little bit with some of his bacon on it. So I can't wait for that to get here. But we're going to continue on and talk about things that are happening in our businesses and what we're seeing going on, and how it's happening. There's one thing that's happening around that I've had talks with a particular client of mine about the sales aspect, and he has a person in the business, working the business, but they're not reaching the goals that he wants to hit. One of the things that they did do, which I think is ill-advised, and I'll get your opinion on it, is they hired a person at base plus commission, but they never made a minimum commission number, right? So, if he makes $1, then he's going to get commission off that $1.
Right.
So what they did was they hired this person base plus commission. They gave him a generous base, and then a commission, and they didn't put any minimums, right? They never said your sales quota is this,
right?
$20,000 a month, $10,000, $100,000 a month. It doesn't matter. And we're just going to pay you, but he gets paid on every dollar. In my opinion, that really doesn't incentivize them to go out and get the money, get the business, as much as you have to hit this threshold in order to get it.
Yeah.
So in your experience, when you're talking about salespeople and you're doing the business development, part of that business development is certainly bringing in sales, getting those people motivated to do that. How do you feel like motivation comes in when we talk about people's sales, talking about business development?
I have a very unique opinion on this, and it's based on some of my background, that money isn't always the driver.
No, 100%.
Money isn't always the driver. Like there's a certain stability with money, obviously, but there are certain things that are not what drives an individual to be successful, and sometimes money is that. And I learned that in some of my earlier years as a sales manager, that it didn't matter how many incentives I had, how many competitions I would put together. Like there was just some sales reps that didn't care. It wasn't about that. Some of them, it was about the win. Some of them was just about being thanked. But one thing that I have not seen, one model that I haven't seen being used very often, is the draw model of instead of just here's your base pay and here's your commission. What about incorporating a draw into that system, right?
Right.
So that you're not going to make any commission dollars until you've met this draw, which typically is attached to what your base pay is.
Correct.
Right. So if you want to grow, we're going to make sure that you have enough money to kind of help you pay your bills. But if you want to grow in this company, you've got to show us that you can meet what we're paying you and then some.
Right.
And so instead of having a base and then commission on every dollar that comes in, well, it's every dollar that comes in after you've already paid yourself off.
Right.
After you've actually become an asset for the company. And I don't see that happening very often in the sales environment these days. And it might just be the way that society kind of has structured it, you know, and how competitive the industry is in sales, where companies have, you know, brought in more of a, you know, commission plus a base, or base plus a commission, right? And that's how they get some of the sales reps away from some of these other companies. But I think that if you had a draw, it would at least protect the company's interests, at least for a certain period of time.
The last time I saw that was 15 years ago.
Right.
In radio, they did that.
Yeah.
So you would have a monthly draw, and then
Yeah.
you would have to make your commissions up to your draw, then some
Yeah.
to make more.
Absolutely.
And that, you're right. I haven't seen that in so long.
It's something. Well, it's as a matter of fact, it's actually something that I've incorporated as part of not the full model of how I charge my clients, but it is part of it, right? Because at the end of the day, there is an ROI that they're expecting. There is something that I'm trying to show them that I can do for them, and it is a symbiotic relationship. It's back and forth and understanding, but at the end of the day, they have to see that their investment into my services is worth their money.
Right. Absolutely. And that's your motivation to bring it in, is to
Right.
make sure that you're doing your best job for that client.
Right.
Going back to the motivation part of it is something I believe is true. You need to determine what that person's motivation is. And if it's not money, then what is it?
Right.
Is it more days off?
Right.
Is it, and all that flows out in determining what their base salary is and how they're going to be structured in a
Right.
bonus plan. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. All right. So one of the things that we talked about in our email back and forth about what you're doing with Hat Rack
Mhm.
is determining the businesses you're going after.
Yeah.
And targeting. So that brings me to, you have a specific ideal client that you're really looking into in a certain niche, right?
Yeah.
To help
absolutely.
them, because that's your background.
Right.
So let's get into your background a little bit on that.
Okay. My background is very well rooted in just business, right? And from that, you know, you can spur off into all the areas of business that I've worked in, everything from, you know, management all the way down to operations, and working in marketing. I've had my hands in a little bit of everything that involves businesses, and I've worked for a variety of different companies, everything from radio, like you mentioned earlier,
Yes.
to a Fortune 500 company. I did my stint in insurance, like a lot of sales guys do,
Right.
you know, just to kind of cut their teeth on some stuff. And so yeah, you know, a lot of business oriented work, and then yes, definitely a lot of sales involved in that. And so the most recent that I had prior to starting my own company was more of a business development, which is a little bit different than sales, but it's sales related.
So, and this is kind of get to know you, because we hope to have this on a monthly basis with me and you, and they can go back to this video and kind of get to know who you are. They see me all the daggum time, and know my background and know where I'm from. So that's really what we're trying to cover here, so that when we do continue on, they can say, "Oh yes, you know."
Yeah.
And the background is from management all the way to sales to the other aspects of business.
Mm-hmm.
When you're with your clients, are you seeing different things when they hire you? Are your clients saying, "Okay, Gabriel, this is what we're wanting to do," and you're going to be focused on that, or are you also looking at all other aspects of their business to where maybe you could put in input to help them?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm kind of a multifaceted consulting arm. Now I'm not going to dive too far into the weeds in some areas, just because it's not my strongest suit. Yes, I can dive into financials, but you need somebody. Once I've gotten you to a certain point, you need somebody else to kind of manage that. I don't want to get into human resources.
Yeah.
But for example, right now I've got a client who has me doing preliminary interviews for his company, just to kind of get things rolling. And And so there's a variety of different things that I can do for my client. Eventually, business development always comes into the picture because it is a huge part of the growth of the business. But I am one of these guys that when I do my discovery process and kind of figuring out if I'm really going to be a good fit for this prospect, because I don't assume that I'm going to be the best fit for every individual. There's a lot of people that have come up to me and they're like, how can I hire you? And it's like, let's not talk about hiring me. Let's talk about, am I a good fit for you first, because you might like me as a person, but I may not be the right thing for you right now, And so kind of in that discovery process, I'm gonna dive into a lot of things as far as like what they're doing with their marketing, what they're doing with their time as a business owner. It's a huge thing, and you'd be surprised how many business owners I'll talk to, and I'll ask them like, what's an hour worth of your time? What is the dollar figure on that?
Yeah,
and
they have no clue.
They haven't even thought about that.
Right.
And I think that sometimes it's not a bad thing. It's just that sometimes having some of those questions asked puts a different perspective on things. And so I have those conversations. I have some discovery process to try to get to know them and know their business and what they're doing before I just throw myself in there and say, oh, I can help you with this and this and this.
And I agree. I mean, fit is key in anything, and especially hiring. That is a smart move on your client's part to have you come in and do some initial interviewing. Most people I see in small businesses don't know how to interview anybody. So, I'm a firm believer in behavioral questions for clients, not only on their past life, but what could happen to them in the future with your business. That's very smart in doing that. It's very smart to get that questionnaire out and see if you are a fit. I tell this people, as a DJ, and you're a DJ, and talking to people who are doing a wedding, am I a good fit for you? Right? I may not be a good fit for you, right? And there's some weddings that I won't do because I know I'm not a good fit for them. Right. Could I do the wedding and do an okay job? Probably. But that's not really where I don't want to be an okay DJ. No. Right. I want them to have the absolute best wedding they can have. Yeah. And fit goes a long way with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's hard to get out of a situation that you shouldn't have been in the first place. That's a tough position to be in, So I'd rather not be in that position. I'd rather just see my way out before I get in. Than to then have to crawfish my way out of a situation because it just wasn't the right place to be, and then potentially having any kind of negative conversations with the person that I'm dealing with and all this kind of stuff, because at the end of the day you do build a relationship sometimes a little bit more personal than what you would want to, because you are dealing with something that is it's their creation. It's their business. This is sometimes as important as their kids. It's their baby. So a
lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into them. Absolutely. Yes.
So it's just something that you don't want to be in a situation where now you're having to have a tough conversation about something that is so special to them and that you shouldn't have even handled to begin with.
You're exactly right. And it goes back to fit. Or am I going to be allowed to come in here and do what needs to be done?
Right.
Or is this something you're going to be offended about and not want me around?
Yep.
So very good points on that. When you're looking at your clients, are one of the things that I've been working on for my book that's coming out in November is who my ideal client is and how I'm going to base my ads to go toward that ideal client.
Yeah.
Do you sit down with your clients and kind of build that avatar out?
Absolutely.
And it's basically a questionnaire, right? And anybody can find this ideal questionnaire online, basically. But you've got to build out your client as is it male or female? Are they college educated? How much money are they making? What are their hobbies?
Yeah.
So you can kind of drill down to where you need to focus to find your next client.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in today's world where there are so many different avenues to directly reach those individuals, right? It's so important to be able to identify that specific client. And I've had the conversations with some of my clients that their response to that is, well, anybody's my customer.
No, that's not true.
And well, to a certain degree, anybody that comes to you needing your services is your customer. Sometimes the person that comes to you might not fit the ideal customer, right? Because maybe they aren't college educated. Maybe they aren't from a particular, background, but they have everything else necessary to actually require your services. And those are one-offs. That's fine. That's great. Mm-hmm. But when you're targeting, when you are going out there and honing down your marketing strategies, whether they're active or passive, and by active and passive, I'm talking about passive as in the sense of things like online marketing, SEO,
mm-hmm.
Social media posts, even some of your traditional media like radio or print media or anything like that. That's all passive. That's all the top of mind awareness model that every business needs to a certain degree,
mm-hmm.
To keep your name out there in front of people. But then you have your active strategies where you're physically going out and you're meeting with potential partners, with industry partners, with networking events, things of that nature. What I do in business development, it's an active role, even if it's just delivering a flyer.
Mm-hmm.
That is an active role that I'm taking, and I'm targeting a certain individual. So when you have me with a limited amount of time, do you want me just going out there, just scattering the globe with trying to get your name across to everybody? Or do you want me specifically honing in on the potential clients or customers that might actually be ready for your services right now?
When you find that ideal client, that's where you're going to focus, and that's where they're spending your money for you to go and say, okay, we know this is our typical person. This, and not only do you have that typical person, but you also know what typically they buy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I will tell you this, that it's not a conversation that I have just one time.
Oh, I'm sure.
Sometimes it's a conversation that I have often, once a quarter maybe, because things change. And the ideal client yesterday might not be the ideal client today, and so it's a conversation that needs to be had sometimes on a more often level than not, because times do change, things do change. There's wells that do dry up, and you have to make that switch. There's seasonalities too, that you have to take into account for. That you may have some customers that are hot and heavy in a particular season, and then they just are non-existent. So you have to be ready to shift and be able to have that conversation to be ready to shift when the shift needs to be done.
That's where a lot of small businesses, I think, as they're growing, they're not scaling correctly because they're not letting go of certain things that need to be done.
Right.
I'm a firm believer in checking your checking account every day. If you're the owner of the business, 100%.
Yeah.
But doing the books, maybe not. And focusing on the things that you do to make money. I want to go back because you touched on this, and I know we're getting out of sequence here, but you talked about an owner's dollar value and how much it is. That reminded me of the quadrants from Covey. I love Covey, and I love his book, 7 Habits. You've got to determine what quadrant you're in. Is it highly urgent and highly important, or is it highly urgent and not important?
Right.
And those are things that you got to distinguish as a business owner. And one of the things I love to do is outsource, right? Fiverr is a great place to outsource certain things. And you got to determine, is my time to sit there and do it myself
Yeah.
worth the $150 or $200 to have somebody do it for me, come back, me review it and send it back for revisions?
Yeah.
That is something that every business owner needs to look at their situation and determine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And that brings me to another point that I wanted to bring up tonight is, and my dad always said this to me, if you have an employee that you can't live without, you better fire them, because they know more about your business than you do. And that's one of the things that has gotten a couple of clients, not my clients, but people I've known, in a little bit of trouble, because all of a sudden Joe has them over a barrel and he's about to leave. Yeah. That is a tough situation to be in. Yeah. And how quickly is that learning curve for you to get back into the meat and potatoes of the business every day?
It's a tough conversation for me to listen to. That I am replaceable.
Oh, 100%.
There are times where my clients might not need my services anymore, and so it's something that I have to kind of be okay with, and I also have to, because of that, show my worth every single week. Just show up every single week. Show up, and so I can't agree with that more, because there are so many companies, especially small businesses, that when you have it rocking and rolling, I mean, it's just Cadillacing, and then somebody leaves, and all of a sudden you see that entire business just shift, like, tremendously.
Yes, scary.
And it's scary. It's scary, and it's like, well, I mean, yes, your employees are valuable, but if that employee is like such a big part of the backbone of the business that the business can't stand on its own, if that employee is no longer there, then you're right. You have a huge problem. And I think that it needs to be one of those things where it's just kind of an equitable split. Everybody plays their part. If the business can't operate, and here's another thing, if the business can't operate without you, then it's not a sustainable model.
That's right. It's not, and it's not scalable.
So it's one of those things where it's not just an employee, it's you.
That's a good point.
So it's not. I think what it boils down to is, like, there's not one individual in the entire business that should hold that kind of power over the entire, company.
Absolutely. And if you're the invaluable employee, then you have limited yourself in how much money you can make, because you are taking care of everything, and you cannot delegate to make it a scalable. What's your next step up? Now, a lot of small businesses, I understand, how it gets stuck in that, and it is difficult. We talked about the ebb and flows of business, and I know this is a crazy episode because we're jumping all over the place, but it gets me pumped up when we talk about small businesses and side hustles and the time it takes to build them and the blood, sweat, and tears you put in them. You got to make it where it's sustainable and scalable. Right. And we talked about the ebb and flow of your business, and your ideal client may be A today, but maybe B 6 months down the road. And you got to keep your eye on it. I go back to things that business changes, right? Who knew that an iPod would be completely something nobody knows what is today. Right. It's gone. It doesn't exist. No. They're gone. Yeah. And your business, whatever your business model is, are you learning, looking, and seeing what's coming up in the future? You got to be that kind of visionary. You were a visionary to start the business and know what your clients needed, but you also got to continue to find out what your clients need to see what the next step is for you, so that not all of a sudden you're doing this, you plateau, and then you're down because your service is now not worth what it used to be.
Right. Yeah. You've got to be an expert in your field. And it's one of those where you got to stay plugged in. You got to stay educated. You got to, me personally, I listen to podcasts, and I listen to podcasts that are within my industry. You know, I know a lot of folks that listen to podcasts and they listen to like entertainment podcasts.
Right.
That's fine. That's fine. You know, but like if you're not listening to podcasts that are gonna, you know, put you in a better position, if you're not reading books that are going to put you in a better position with your business, you're doing yourself a disservice. I'm not a reader. I absolutely hate to read.
Yep.
You know, but we live in a world where now you can sit in your car and turn on Audible and just, you know, listen to a book. You don't have to like sit there. And for me, it's my ADHD. It kicks in. I
Right.
start reading on one page, and then next thing you know, I'm like off in somewhere in some other world.
Right.
But if I sit there and listen to the book being read to me, I can pay attention and be entertained by it, and so yeah, so just staying on top of things and getting involved in things that pertain to your business, whether it's a group that meets for that particular
Absolutely.
thing, because that's what keeps you kind of in the know, so that you know to shift, when to shift, how to shift, and not get left behind.
Right. And I'm going to go back to Covey.
Yeah.
Iron sharpens iron, you know.
Absolutely.
And you got to be in there with the people you're with
Yeah.
to learn more. I want to go back to getting to know Gabriel. And not only do you have your business here, you've been in business for many, many years working for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a side hustle
Mm-hmm.
that you do also. And we have a whole episode with you on the side hustle on this channel. So if you
Yeah.
want to go see that, I'll link it down below also.
Yeah.
What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? When I find time for fun, right?
Correct. You're an
Because
entrepreneur.
a serial entrepreneur with, you know, a fiance, 2 kids, and a 15-year-old and a 8-year-old cheerleader who is now 3 practices a week and games she's having to go to. So, you know, first of all, it's actually putting fun into my schedule, right? And I think that's important. I think that as a business owner, you need to have that. You know, just like everything else is on your schedule, you need to put in family time into your schedule. You need to put in time for yourself into your schedule. For me, I mentioned how I like to listen to podcasts. It's entertaining for me. It's an activity that not only is beneficial for me as a business owner, but it's something that I also like to do. Right. I also find you know, things that help me relax. I play percussion. I play hand percussion, bongos, congas, things of that nature. I haven't had an opportunity to do that in a while. But it was definitely one of those things that when I was doing it and doing it regularly, you know, just coming home from work, getting on the drums, and just it was relaxing for me.
Sure.
So now, because, you know, of work and the kids and this and that, it's not as easier for me to find. So for me, it's just kind of honing in on those extra moments of free time that I have in my life to like hone in a little bit more on my spirituality, right? Because spirituality is a big part of my life. And what I do, it's already, it's part of it, of things on my calendar, you know, my prayer, my relationship with God. And any time that I find an extra moment, just take that moment and focus it on prayer and whatnot. And that's just me, you know, it's relaxing. It's kind of reconnects me, realigns me, you know, with things in life. And so for me, that's kind of where it's at.
The whole, the religious part for me is a stress reliever also, because I'm a firm believer in that you pray, you tell God what you want, and specifically what you want, and then you let go. You may get it, you may not.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that I know that I have turned it over, and that kind of relieves the stress off of me.
Right.
Now, you still got to do what you got to do. You still have responsibilities to make things succeed.
Yeah.
You still got to be out there and pushing.
Right.
But you still know that you've turned it over. That's a big deal to me.
It's huge. It's huge. To be able to just let go of all these things. You know, for me, it kind of just reminds me of our childhood. with Christmas and Santa Claus,
Mm-hmm.
right? We would write a letter to Santa Claus and kind of put all the little items, all the toys that we wanted, right? And then we put it in an envelope and shipped it off, and then we just forgot about it.
Mm-hmm.
We forgot about it until Christmas morning, and then we never even thought about the things that we didn't get. We were just so excited about the things that we did get,
Right.
And so for me, prayer is kind of the same way. Like you said, it's just turning everything over to Him, saying, "It's all yours. I'm here just as a vessel. It's all yours." And just saying those words takes so much off my shoulders. And like I said, it naturally just helps me realign and get back in the groove of.
And I think it also flows over, and I know it does for you because I know the person you are. It flows over into what we do for a living and how we do it for a living. We don't do it, to get that paycheck every 2 weeks, we really feel like, just like this channel, just like my book, just like what you're doing with your clients and what I'm doing with DJing and the whole 9 yards. What we focus on is to try to do the best we can do, but to bring others joy, to bring others peace, right? Yeah. When you go out there and your business development for a particular client and you're bringing in that stuff and you're succeeding for that client, that gives that client peace. And now you are helping them get what they want. Right. And I go back to Zig Ziglar because I love him so much. Yep. You get what you want when you help enough people get what they want. And I'm a firm believer with that. And that also is part 100%. Of our religious.
Sometimes with what I do, take the business development out of it, take the marketing and all those business related terms. And for my clients, I've noticed that the one thing that they all have in common, aside, their businesses are completely different, but the one thing that they have in common is that they are alone in business. They are by themselves. Mm-hmm. Yes, they have spouses, they have significant others, whatever the case might be. But there's only so much that they feel comfortable sharing with those individuals.
Oh, you're so right.
Not because they don't love them, they don't care about them, or they don't feel like, but just because they don't want to bring them into the chaos that is their life.
Correct.
Just to protect them from, additional stress and this and that and the other. So they bottle some of these things in, and they are alone. They don't have anybody. And then I become an outlet for them. Mm-hmm. I become somebody that they can come to. And it's something that I take very seriously. That, no, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not charging for a psychological session, but just somebody that can be there and they can say, okay, I'm not by myself. I've got somebody with me. And I've had several conversations with some of my clients about that, the money that they're paying me, they're like, man, I wouldn't think twice about paying you that just to have you here by my side. It just makes so much sense.
That's a great segue into what you're doing is you're helping people get what they want, right, and pushing them toward that. Right. And you're there as a confidant, not just to business develop, but also as to help them stay on track.
Right.
And that's absolutely, where I think I'm headed down that road,
right,
with an accountability partner program that we're going to launch in November that we're still putting the final touches on, to where it's tough when you're in business and you get up every day and you go, all right, this week, here's what I want to win. I want to win on these certain things. Mm-hmm. And then that week comes and goes and you haven't done your one. You haven't won a single thing.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes that's life. Yeah. Sometimes it's not.
Right.
But when you go, whether it's on a religious side or whether it's on a business side, that accountability partner, when you know that you're going to talk to your accountability partner the next week or in 2 weeks, and they go, have you, did you do this? Did you do that? And you got to be honest and be truthful.
Yeah.
Did you do it or not do it? And that's one of the things that I think is so important, that if I'd have had an accountability partner, I could have gotten a lot more accomplished. Yeah. And you go, well, is it worth it? Yeah. right? It's I hate to call it coaching because I don't think it is coaching.
I agree with you. I hate that term.
I do too.
In business because it has, I don't know, it's gotten so watered down, and it has just become this cookie cutter. Like just throw the same thing for everybody, and it works for some, it doesn't work for others. The ones that it worked for, well, that's because they were following the process. The ones that it didn't work for, they weren't following the process. Well, hang on a second.
Right, I agree.
Was the back to the fit thing, right? Was the process a good fit for that individual? No. So I think that the term accountability partner makes so much more sense because then it becomes more about like that particular individual, that particular industry, that particular person's wants and needs and aspirations.
Right.
Versus just going out there and hitting them with the same thing that you're hitting everybody else with. And so yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because you're sitting there saying it and I'm thinking in my head, like, I want to say that I don't like coaching, but I don't know if he's going to like be okay with it, but we're on the same page.
And that's why I like hanging out with you because we do agree on so much.
Yeah.
There's some things we don't, but there's a lot that we do. Serena Williams has a coach. Did her coach ever win any type of major tennis?
Yeah.
No. But the fact of the matter is that accountability was there, the training was there, and that kind of thing. And finding out what works for that particular person and what motivates them, number one, and really what their goals are. And I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. It goes down to why. Why are you doing it?
Yep. I had a coach back in high school. I ran cross country. And this was my cross country coach. And we would run every single day. And we had a route that we would run. Had multiple routes that we would run. And this guy would get into his Acura and drive alongside us while we're running. He's my coach. And he's not running with me.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, I'm out here in the Florida heat and humidity running in the middle of the afternoon while he's in his air-conditioned Acura just driving along beside us. I had less respect for him as my coach because of that, because he wasn't there beside me, you know? And I think that that's a lot of what's happening in business and the coaching models that are out there is that you have somebody. I had a coach at one time.
Sure, I did too.
And the guy wasn't even in the same state, much less the same, you know, like he called me and I felt so detached from this individual. Sure, he was, you know, every call was questions about my numbers and was I hitting this and was I hitting that? But I don't know. I just felt like there was no other connection other than that. Again, with what I'm bringing to the table, what you're, you know, planning on launching yourself, you're there beside them. No, you can't be there all times. You're not omnipotent, right? But you're there. You're active and you're helping them. I see coaches like, you know, Dabo Sweeney, and I'm a Florida State fan, so Mike Norvell. I mean, these guys, you see them in practice, and they're there. They're running with the players. They're right beside them. They're competing with them. And no, are they winning championships like the other teams? No, but like when you see the connections that they have with those players and the ability that they have to get those players to like turn and flip a switch in the middle of a game, it's because they believe in their coach, because their coach has been there as an accountability partner beside them at all times.
Absolutely right. And you know, I can say this without any regret or embarrassment. I have made money in businesses and I have lost money in businesses. I've had businesses fail. Yeah. No doubt about it. Yeah. But those businesses that failed were some of the best learning experiences I ever had.
Absolutely.
So I knew, I mean, I spent tons of money to open a business and I thought it was going to be the best thing ever. And then it turns out it's not.
Right.
Hey, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
I learned, I move on.
Yeah.
And now I want to make sure that other people, I want to make sure people are getting what they want.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to start a side hustle and find that niche that they want to be in,
Mm-hmm.
I want to help them do that. And the very first chapter of my book is talking about, should you even be an entrepreneur?
Right.
Right. So the very first chapter, you buy my book, and the very first chapter, you realize, no, that's not it. Well, give the book to somebody else, right? Give it away to somebody else so maybe they could see if they are really an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's cut out to do it.
Not everybody's cut out to do it. Not everybody's cut out to be a business owner. There's a lot of people that are really good at a craft. They're really good at, perhaps cooking, carpentry, whatever the case might be. But just because you're good at a craft does not mean that you're a good entrepreneur.
Mm-mm.
It's not
right.
good enough for business, and there's a place for you, in the world. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of, circumstances that you weren't even calculating for that come with, running your own business. And if you're not ready to deal with that stuff, you're going to lose your mind very quickly.
True. And I go back to somebody I know very well, and she's always looking for that next opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
She has a full-time job, but she wants to make this amount of money, so she's going to start doing this. And she started so many jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And and one of them was she'd been doing this for 20 years, right? Yeah. So one of the things she did was these gift baskets, right? Mm-hmm. And she got a contract with different banks, with different other companies where, they just called her up and said, hey, we need to send this to a client, or we need to do this or whatever. And she would put together a basket. They trusted her explicitly in getting that done and getting it out there. Yeah. And it became work. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it's just too much for her to handle because it's work now. Mm-hmm. And every side hustle, you may love it. You may love baking those muffins every day and giving them out and selling them to your buddies on the street. But once you start opening up a storefront and you're doing it every single day, it becomes work. And people don't realize that. But your side hustle, if you love your side hustle and you love your hobby, leave it as a hobby. Yeah. Because once you turn it into a business, it becomes a job.
Absolutely. And there are some sayings about, if you do something that you love for work, you'll never work a day in your life.
That's bull.
I think so. It's, look, it's, we were put on this earth to work, to toil the fields, to it's a job. If it was supposed to be fun, it would just be called fun. But no, it's a job. Whether you are doing a job for yourself or you're doing it for somebody else, it's work. It's not supposed to be fun. Doesn't mean that you can't have fun while you're doing it. Right. But it's going to be hard work. And what I would say to your friend is, maybe you should go back to the drawing board and ask yourself why you're really doing this. Because you want to make more money. Okay, that's natural. If you have a business and naturally you're going to make more money. But what is it that you want to do with that money? What is so important that you need that money?
Absolutely right.
Because then that becomes your why. Mm-hmm. If our why was to make more money, well, we could do that doing some other things. We don't have to take on the burden of running a business, of starting a business and the risk and everything. No, we could do other things, right? There's got to be something else. There's got to be something deeper. And that takes time sometimes to really dive into and figure that out. Because at that point, then when you're making those baskets or making whatever it is that you're making, biscuits and muffins or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And that moment hits you where, man, I wish I was doing something else. Right. You go back to why you're doing it. That's right. You know? Because if it's money that you're doing it for, well, now your mind is going to start putting together ways that you can make money differently. Right. And now you're bouncing off to the next thing, Right. But if you have something else, I want to travel the world. Right. I want to take, be specific. I want to take a trip to Europe. Right. And until I take a trip to Europe, based on the money that I make off this business, it's not worth it.
Right.
You know? And so like have something that is more attainable, and you know, and more specific.
I agree. And the reason that my side hustle is DJing, why I've spent a year and a half writing this book, and now why I do these podcasts, we film them, I edited them, I put them up, all that time is because I have a certain why that I'm doing all this to get to a level where there's why I'm doing it and what the final end product of how that affects, my whys are people. Right. So how this affects me to be with those people is what's so important to me. And that's my why. And it's just very important.
Right. Absolutely.
All right. We've been talking a good while. We're going to close it up, I think, I think we're going to be a little bit more specific. Last week we got off track a bunch tonight, but I think it was, trying to get to know you and hopefully you've had fun and you'll come back and do this again. We thank Billy down on 181. Come down here and have a burger for him, with him. Tell him that Gabriel and Jason sent you, that you saw the podcast. We sure would appreciate it. Again, this is on Firewatch Business. It's also on Spotify. The audio version is on Spotify. You can find that by searching Firewatch Business. And Hat Rack Consulting.
Absolutely.
Give Gabe a call. His contact information will be in the description.
Oh, and I'm actually working on getting my website put together this weekend. So
nice.
Very excited about that.
Yes. There's your weekly win, right? Yeah, exactly. And that's it. You crush your weekly wins.
Yeah.
Find out what your weekly win is, crush them, and then we'll see where we're at next week.
Absolutely.
And it's a step-by-step process. Keep it going.
Yeah.
Believe, act, succeed. Thanks for watching. We'll see y'all on the next one. Like and subscribe.